Hello and welcome to this video. I am here with Dr. Garrett Smith, nutrition detective on YouTube and other internet channels and forums. And I have the great pleasure of hosting Garrett today to talk about toxic bile theory, which has become toxic bile paradigm over the years of experience that he's had, certainly that I've had, and many people in my community also have had. And so this episode replaces episode 53 and 71 to bring a little certain things up to date and give you a more current view of this work. So do you want to just dive right in, Garrett, or is there anything else you want to say?
No, it was about time. I'm glad you approached me about doing this so that we could update it. I mean, it's lots of things change. Like the foundational stuff has stayed the same. We've made some changes along the way, but sometimes I don't think I expanded upon certain concepts well enough back then, or that I could have done better, and so we're just trying to explain it better. So, because with this whole paradigm, a lot of people feel that it's explaining their health when they were feeling better. It's explaining when they were feeling worse. It gives them reasons why suddenly, let's say, they don't feel good. So it's answering a lot of questions for people, and knowing how to fit this into the paradigm, or knowing what angle a person is working with, can really help them to figure their way out, or it can help them if they're working with me or our health facilitators or anybody who knows the program, to help them get out of any rough patches that they might be having, because detox is not easy.
Indeed, I know from experience at this stage of the game. So yeah, my health never made sense to me, and it does now. That's miraculous. I honestly didn't think that would happen. So thank you very much. And yeah, so if we dive in with the first question, your paradigm is based on the body's intelligence rather than the idea that the body is dumb and it's made a mistake and went rogue. So do you want to talk about that a little bit first?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most critical ideas that I think we function on, is that the body is wonderfully designed. It is designed to do, as people talk about in, like, counseling or therapy or stuff, they say people do the best they can at any moment with the tools that they have. And I kind of took that idea, and it makes sense to me. If people have bad tools, then they have trouble getting out of their situation, and they're still trying their best. They just can't dig themselves out, or maybe they can, but they may have better tools or worse tools, and that affects how they exist in this world. So when we're talking about the body being wonderfully designed, the idea would be, with nutrition, proper nutrition, and proper detoxification, is if the body's full of toxins, it's not going to work well. It's going to do the best it can in the midst of all of those toxins. And if the body doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to run, it can't do the things that it needs to do, but it will do its best. It will sometimes try to, like, use other nutrients or compounds or other things to bridge the gap. It will do whatever it can. And so with this idea, the idea is that the body can fix itself of most things if we simply if we can remove the things that are the obstacles to it healing. This is in direct opposition to, like, conventional medicine, where they'll basically just be like, you're broken. Like, you've got high blood pressure. Oh, you need this medication for the rest of your life. You're broken. You will never be better again. Or they'll give you the old, you're just getting older, and life and health sucks as you get older. And we can look at things and say, well, we also see that things we don't really like vitamin A in the blood and copper in the blood, go up as people age. And so, if for people out there who think those things are good, if those things were good, shouldn't we be feeling better as we age? And we're looking at it going, these are going up as people age, and people feel bad as they age generally. So that correlation would be something that we're not going to ignore. So why are these things happening? Well, like we say, the body's doing the best it can with the tools that it has. And if we just simply remove the toxins, or don't put them in, or help the body to get rid of them, and then we give the body what it needs in terms of nutrition, at least the biochemical part of it is not getting in the way of the body healing. Now, there can be, as we know, mental stuff getting in the way. There could be literally physical things in the way. But there's lots of things. Like I can only, be an expert in so many areas. So this is the area that I deal with, and then I do highly suggest people work with other people in other areas of their life and health for their expertise, like working potentially with you on mental, emotional, spiritual stuff that is getting in the way. And that's a huge part of it. So yeah, we believe the body can heal itself. And if it's not, something is either in the way of too much, like toxicity, or it's not enough, like nutrition. So that's that.
And it's beautifully simple. I appreciate that. It's also the reason that I decided I'm never going to take health advice from a young person again, because they haven't necessarily seen the fallout of the later years, dare I say.
Very much. Well, the problem that many younger, let's say, health influencers or even other practitioners is that they come across the one thing or a couple things that made them feel better. And we know that feeling better short term is not always feeling better long term. And then they make the mistake of thinking that that one thing is what causes everybody's problems. As an example, with like parasites, people will think, oh, I had parasites and I did something to get rid of them, and then these health issues went away. So then everybody in the world's problems are all completely related to parasites, right? Or I'll joke about fatigue. People say, well, what causes fatigue? And some people, candida or what? And then you go, well, what if you just don't sleep well? I mean, doesn't that make you tired? Like, so we start going, there can be many, many, many different causes to one problem. And when people become and so people will try to pigeonhole me into the low vitamin A thing as like, that's the only thing I talk about. And I say, if people do that, they have no idea of the expanse of my work as this has come around in the years. So we don't want to narrow it down to just one thing. We want to keep our mind open to things. And if somebody comes and tells me that, like, okay, doc, I was doing the diet and stuff and it wasn't working as well, and I went and I did this, and all of a sudden that got better, I'm like, great. Like, I know the stuff we were doing was likely helping you, and if you needed to break through with something else, that's okay too. So my approach can't cover every single thing for every single person. However, I do think we cover quite a lot, as the testimonials attest to.
Exactly. And with any luck, we have time to go into those at the end. So what is toxic bile paradigm?
So toxic bile paradigm, as you said, we previously called it toxic bile theory. The simple idea, I'm trying to not go too far ahead in our questions. The simple idea is that a person's chronic disease symptoms are caused by, aggravated by, or relieved by the bile that the liver makes that leaks into the system. So it's kind of like when we understand bile and how the liver makes bile to get rid of the toxins that are in the liver. Well, that if we think of it as kind of like nuclear waste or sewage treatment plant waste, well, that's a dangerous thing now. That's something that causes problems. I mean, the liver's trying to get rid of this stuff. And if that bile, it's called cholestasis in the medical literature. Cholestasis means bile stagnation. Well, bile stagnation can be like if a river was stagnant or if a river was blocked, it starts pushing backwards and finding new ways. Well, the bile in the body can push backwards and eat holes through things and then leak into places it's not supposed to be. So the idea is that when this toxic bile is backwashing, leaking into the system, it causes the symptoms that we have. And the idea that we are going by is if we can reduce the toxicity of the bile, and if we can, by doing that, the body healing itself can then heal the leaks, then the bile, as we're going to talk about where the bile goes, the bile stays in almost all in the system, in the closed system, the enterohepatic circulation that it's supposed to, and then people's symptoms go down. And then we see them improve and we see stuff go away that everybody says can't be fixed. So that's the idea. It's toxic bile paradigm is the idea of bile leaking into the system that is toxic. The more toxic it is, the more you leak. And then that's causing people's symptoms in various parts of the body. So yeah.
There you go. Good nutshell. And what is bile? Because there's a lot of different takes on that. There's people who sing the praises of bile, and you're saying it can be toxic waste.
Hmm.
What's going on with that?
Yeah, so bile is kind of I mean, something can be good and something can be bad at the same time, right? It can live in both worlds. So a lot of people in the alternative health community will talk about, you want your bile because it helps you digest fats, and you want your bile because it helps. I mean, is that true? Yes, it emulsifies fats and helps you absorb them. There's stuff like the bile will prevent certain bad bacteria or dysbiosis from overgrowing, particularly in your small intestine. And so the bile is in a good way, the bile is how your liver gets rid of its toxic waste. I've called it before, the bile is the liver's poop. So if you think of the mistake that people make about the liver is they think that the liver just detoxes things, and that these toxins somehow, once the liver has detoxed them, the toxins just poof and disappear, or they've been made into something that is so innocuous that it doesn't matter anymore. Like it's just this magical thing of detox, and it's really not. Just like a sewage treatment plant, takes in sewage and it's going to process it, and it could you could get water that could be reclaimed water that could be used places, and you're going to have other things, and you're going to have a kind of if you think of like what a filter would catch, the sewage treatment plant's going to be catching all sorts of super nasty stuff. What do they do with it after that? They can't just make it disappear. Well, think of that as like the liver, that's the bile. And so then the liver wants to get rid of the bile. So does the bile have functions in the body? Is it necessary? Yes. Is the bile also full of toxins? By definition, the bile is the most toxic fluid in the body. That's how the liver gets rid of its waste. So that goes, we want to get rid of it to a certain extent, as generally if we're toxic, we want to get rid of as much of it as we can. What I've come to the conclusion of, or the realization of, is as people become more toxic, this is the hardest part for people to understand. They're generally going to make less bile. That doesn't mean they're not making it. They're making less of it. So if they have the same amount of toxicity coming in, and they're making less bile, what happens is that bile actually becomes more concentrated in toxicity. So it's more damaging. And then that bile is doing the problems. As we get people better, their bile becomes less toxic, and their liver actually gets better at making more of it. So it's like a thin, and this is what a lot of alternative practitioners talk about. They talk about making the bile thinner. Well, more bile with less toxicity in it would be thinner bile, and it wouldn't be the sludge, and it wouldn't be the goo and all that stuff that people talk about. So that the bile is a critical piece of how the body gets rid of toxins. So that's a big part that we're working on. Oh, the one thing I want to tell people is we're not anti-bile. Some people might think we're anti-bile. We are very much not anti-bile. We are simply about, if we do what we're setting out to do, which is to make the bile less toxic and to allow the body to produce it as it is designed to, all of the good aspects, all of the functional aspects, the beneficial aspects of bile will be happening on their own. We have simply made the bile less damaging and less toxic and function better. So that's that.
It's one of my favorite things about learning with you is that I'm indoctrinating or unindoctrinating myself from saying, is it good or is it bad? Right? Because it's what context is it? What's the recipe of the bile? Bile was much more my enemy 14 months ago before I started working with you. And now it's like, yay, producing more bile, things are moving more easily, and I feel better. So yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
very. And so maybe you've already answered most of this, but maybe there's something else. But so we produce it, you said, in order to process the sewage, process the waste and the toxicity. And so exactly when does it become a problem? Is there anything more you want to add there?
Well, the biggest thing that people will say, well, what does toxic bile cause? what are the symptoms of a bile dump? And I may get into that later or in another, this is probably going to be a multi-part series. So we may get into that later as we get into more detailed questions. However, when does it become a problem? Well, generally with chronic illness conditions, chronic disease symptoms. If that's happening, especially if it's cyclical and you kind of have worse moments and better moments and worse moments and better moments and you can't figure out why, well, those worse moments would be when the bile is particularly being dumped by the liver, and then it's leaking into the system, and then your symptoms get aggravated. Now, this can be happening all day long, so people can have symptoms all day long, but most of the time people are noticing ebbs and flows to the symptoms, and they often don't know what they're doing that is making that better or worse. They also don't know whether they're helping the detox. Most of the time, they don't know whether they're helping the detox process, or think about this, if toxic bile leaking into your system was the cause of your symptoms, and you do things, whether that's supplements or other things that reduce your liver's ability to produce bile, that's not good because you still have the toxins coming in, but then your symptoms can improve for a while because you're simply not pushing out bile. This is an example of this would be fasting, where people start fasting and they say, I feel amazing. Like after the first day or after the first, 12 hours or whatever, I felt better. I mean, I felt worse for those 12 hours, but then I got over the hunger part and now all of my symptoms go away, or many of them do, or get a lot better. And then they fast for however long that is. Let's say it's just a couple days, and then they go back to eating. And then all of their symptoms come back. And I go, what'd you really fix? Because what happened? Why did their symptoms go away? Well, if you're not eating, you're not going to be producing and dumping bile as much. And so that is a demonstration, like a literal demonstration of when you're not dumping bile because you're not triggering it with food, the symptoms get better because your liver can finally catch up on cleaning up that extra toxic bile that was in your blood, or your liver and your kidneys can work on it. So that's an example of basically any of your chronic disease symptoms could be linked to the toxic bile that is leaking into your blood. And we'll get into the bile recipe and how that affects the types of symptoms that people have.
Okay, and just to repeat that the production of bile is caused by eating, correct?
Well, that would be one trigger for it to be made, because I mean that's one of its functions, right? It's to help us break down and emulsify and absorb fats. So especially high fat meals trigger a bile dump. That's what they do. The problem is the bile is also used to basically help absorb the fat. So the more fat you're eating, yes, you are triggering bile dumps, which could make things worse, but then also you're absorbing more of that bile that you just dumped right back into the system. So we are not proponents of high fat diets for helping the bile system, to be straightforward about that. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And so that leads me right into the next question. What is a bile dump and how does bile get out of the enterohepatic system? You talked about leaky tissues that goes into the blood and all of the organs.
Okay. So, well, a bile dump, quite simply, is when either your liver produces, a bunch of bile at once, or more commonly, it would be we store bile in our gallbladder. The gallbladder is a little reservoir for bile in between meals. And why does the gallbladder exist? Well, in my opinion, it is mainly there to, think of it as the liver makes bile at a trickle. And so if you were trying to wash dishes with a trickle of water, it would take a long time. It would be very inefficient and it wouldn't work very well because you tend to have all the dishes come at once, right? So you got this little trickle of water. You can't clean them very well. It could happen. It would take a long time and it probably wouldn't be done very well. So if you could imagine, like washing dishes, if you had that trickle of water from the sink and you can plug the sink and collect the water over a period of time, then you have water in the sink that you can use to wash the dishes all at once. So that's what the gallbladder is, like the plugged sink. The gallbladder collects the bile for a while. And then when you eat, like when the meal time comes and the dirty dishes all come in, when you eat food, the gallbladder contracts and dumps the bile into the intestines so it can do what it's supposed to do. So a bile dump it could be from the liver. It could also be from the gallbladder. That's really what we're just talking about. Do we get to know where it came from? No, because we can't watch all that stuff. A lot of this stuff we have honestly created theories and concepts for these things so people can visualize them, but nobody has the all the research that's showing this piece by piece because nobody's been looking into it in this way. So people go, well, how can I not find this in the papers? And you go, well, you wouldn't be able to find any groundbreaking paradigm in the papers, or you'd already know about it, right? So we have that. So the bile dump is when the bile is released, if you will, pushed out into the system. Okay. So then normally what we want to have, so there's something called the enterohepatic circulation, enterohepatic circulatory system, or enterohepatic circulation. Entero means guts, like your intestines, and it includes your stomach, and hepatic means liver. So that means gut to liver circulation, like a cycle, like a circle. Okay. So your liver makes bile. Now we're talking here like perfect world. Okay. Your liver makes bile. It goes down the bile duct. It goes into the intestines. It does not go backwards up into your stomach. We don't want that, but that actually happens. That's bile reflux. That's GERD. You can go watch the whole live stream on that. But so the bile is supposed to go down into your intestines, and some of it will eventually be pooped out. Some of it, or a lot of it, is generally reabsorbed via the blood vessels that take nutrients and toxins from your gut back up to the portal vein, which then goes right back to the liver. So that's why they call it the gut to liver to gut to liver to gut to liver circulation. So the bile goes down into the intestines. Some of it's absorbed, some of it's pooped out. The pooped out stuff has obviously left the circulation. That has now been truly detoxed. I'd like to remind people, detox is not done until those things have left your body. So once you poop it out, it's gone. But with that enterohepatic circulation, you're reabsorbing bile and it's going right back to the liver. So then your liver has to process it again. And the bile can actually become made more toxic in the gut by the gut bacteria turning it into secondary bile acids and tertiary bile acids, and then it can become even nastier. So we don't want it doing this loop. It just becomes more toxic over time. So we want to get rid of it. But that's the leaking. Okay, so the leaking. Bile over time can become so toxic that it actually eats holes in the very liver cells that make it, in the tiny little bile ducts inside the liver, in the big bile ducts, the common bile duct and the other big bile ducts that go to other places. It eats holes in the gut. Toxic bile is actually the cause of leaky gut. For those of you out there who have looked into leaky gut all these times, and you've done all these protocols and it never fixes you, and you've never heard about the bile, well, the bile is why you didn't get better. And the bile is why we're fixing the bile is why we're helping people to recover from things like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's and all these things. It's because it's the bile that was eating away at their gut lining. So then we have the bile can also go backwards up into the stomach, and that's reflux. But it's been shown in the research that your stomach can actually directly absorb the bile into the normal bloodstream. So this is why like people with heartburn can have heart problems. Like they start getting heart pain and heart rhythm stuff because the bile is going up into their stomach and their esophagus, and they're directly absorbing it into the blood. And what's right next door? You have the heart. So this is how these things can all connect. So the leak, so you don't even have to leak in your stomach. You just absorb it. But then you get things like Barrett's or ulcers in the stomach is bile eating holes. Barrett's esophagus, where people are actually getting holes in their esophagus, is bile too. So yeah, this is how it gets in there. It just eats holes, and then it starts leaking. So there's two types of cholestasis out there. There's one called intrahepatic, and there's one called extrahepatic. Now, for those of you who are following me, I don't want you to obsess on this. This doesn't get you anywhere. Knowing whether you have And it's always going to be a mix of the two. There's always going to be some intrahepatic and some extrahepatic. And how are you going to know? You don't get to know. You just get to know that there's this idea. Like this idea doesn't help us fix anything. So intrahepatic means the bile is actually literally leaking from the liver itself, whether it's those cells that are damaged or whether it's the little teeny bile ducts inside the liver. Think of them like bile capillaries, however you want to say it. So like the tiniest blood vessels, but these are the tiniest bile ducts. And so it can leak directly from the liver out into the system. I think my opinion is the quicker you know that you do something, the wrong thing, and you feel symptoms, the more that is likely intrahepatic cholestasis. Extrahepatic cholestasis means outside of the liver. The extra means outside of the liver. So this would be the common bile duct or the other bile ducts. This would be leaky gut. This would be the stomach, the reflux, where the bile has left the liver itself and it's now leaking into the system. So if people who got symptoms, let's say soon after they ate or like 30 minutes after they ate or whatever, that would likely be extrahepatic because the bile, the time that it took the symptoms to show up would be, related to it having to leave the liver and go and leak into the system. So yeah, so that's it. And then, once the bile is in the blood, so if the bile's in the blood, the liver can start working on taking it out of the blood again. Again, it's just the liver's having to do these processes like over and over to the same stuff. So if the liver can deal with it again, it also goes to the kidneys. The kidneys do get rid of some of the bile. However, they don't like it, and it causes the kidneys a lot of suffering and kidney damage. And this is why when we start fixing the bile, we see things like chronic kidney disease getting better. And then we also have the next stage of detox, or that this was kind of I think one of the questions we were about to go over. Then it heads to the skin. So the idea would be if the liver and the guts could get rid of it all, that'd be great, and you wouldn't have kidney problems. If the liver and the guts can't get rid of it and it eats holes in this and it goes in, then the kidneys start working on it. And if the kidneys get overloaded, then you got kidney problems. If the liver and the kidneys together can't get rid of it, then it goes out the skin. And you have literal toxic bile and all the toxins in it coming out in your skin and irritating your skin on the way out. And also when it's just sitting there for an extended period of time. So that's where it goes and that's what it does.
Right, and you've mentioned many times about the skin being a kind of gatekeeper, that the toxins get baked in there, so they might not make it out compared to through the gut.
Yeah. The skin is a very interesting thing. Like we do get rid of lots of things. There is actually research on drug testing people through their sweat. Now, it never came about because I think it was too good. And they would have been catching all sorts of high profile people with these tests that they don't want to get caught. So, that's my theory on that. But yeah, we get rid of a lot of toxins through the skin. And then the idea of okay, so, well, yeah, the sun oxidizes things, and oxidation is part of the detox process. The crazy thing about oxidation, and we'll get into this one, the liver biochemical pathways, is it can make things more toxic. So people here's an example. Like there's a guy out on the internet who says, if you want to get tan, you need to eat lots of vitamin A. That's his statement. Okay. So then what is getting tan? Well, what do our people see? And a lot of people, before they get tan, right, they have to go out and get burned, right? It's almost like they have to get burned before they start getting tan. Okay. Well, our people see that they don't, as they do this longer, they stop burning. Or it takes them tons more time out in the sun to even get a mild sunburn. And then they don't tan as much because they're not burning as much. And their skin becomes less light sensitive and their eyes become a lot less light sensitive. So they can go outside with that. They don't have to wear sunglasses all day. Or we have computer guys who can work on, they had trouble working on screens all day because of the blue light. Well, they're now able to not have these eye problems while they're working. So their eyes are not as sensitive to the computer generated blue light or the artificial blue light either. So these things, toxins, we have to get rid of them. The sun does help detox toxins in our skin, which means move them along the detox pathway. It doesn't mean it gets rid of them. And so people who get tan, like, can getting tan be, or being able to get really tan be a bad thing? Yeah. As we see with our people, we get them better from all these conditions, and then they literally tan 95% less and they stop burning. Well, some people say that's seed oils. Seed oils are also what color? They're yellow, tons of vitamin A in them. They also probably store lots of vitamin A as retinol esters in the skin and the subcutaneous body fat. So you have these toxins that are actually literally bound together in the skin, and then the sun can cause them to become more problematic. It also it helps them detox, but it can also cause problems. So that, again, like, we're back to it can be good and bad at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. So one last thing about that, because there's a common lexicon in the culture of your work that I've adopted, and someone would say, "Oh yeah, I had a bile dump in the middle of the night. I felt terrible. I woke up, I was in a sweat, or I felt sick," or something like that. So it's become synonymous with my body let go of toxic bile, and now I have the headache or the sinuses or whatever. So yeah, just wanted to. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, yeah, there's an interesting thing that I came to the realization of as a possibility of what might be happening with the middle of the night bile dump. There's a couple of things that I've thought it could be in the past. One is it's just a circadian rhythm. So if we look up the circadian rhythm of bile, there is a circadian rhythm to it. Like, the body will tend to dump bile at certain times. And for people who know about Chinese medicine, right, the liver is like, what, 11 to 1 p.m., 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then the gallbladder time is 1 to 3 a.m., which is when a lot of people wake up, which is really a coincidental thing that the gallbladder holds the bile for the bile dump. There was an interesting thing that I was thinking of. I mean, it could be a blood sugar drop in the middle of the night. So you want to think of one of the things we talk about that causes bile dumps: stress. Any source of stress could potentially cause a bile dump. So let's say somebody has a blood sugar drop in the middle of the night. That's stress on the body. Body dumps cortisol and adrenaline and tries to break down, fats and proteins into glucose so it can raise the glucose again. And that's a stressful thing. Anybody knows that when their blood sugar drops, they don't feel good. Mm-hmm. We have that as one potential thing. But one thing that I came to the realization that might be happening for people was after the Rhonda Holman episode on the airway stuff and the apnea and the breathing at night. Well, if you were asleep and all of a sudden, let's say you go deeper into sleep and your tongue, the floppy tongue, as she talks about, or for whatever reason, you have trouble breathing, like a mini apnea episode. Okay, literally not breathing while you're not conscious would be one of the most stressful things you could have happen, right? Like, you're choking to death and you're asleep and you wake up and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, one of the things that happens when people wake up often, right? They're stressed all of a sudden. They start ruminating. Their thoughts keep going. And why am I stressed? Why am I awake? First of all, why am I stressed? Why do I have to pee? Well, that's part of a stress hormone situation. And then why do they have trouble going back to sleep? Well, as Rhonda was saying, I loved this idea. It was like, if your body knew, you didn't consciously know, but your body knew that you going back to sleep again might literally be like getting choked for air. Then your body goes, I don't really want to do that. Like, that didn't end well last time, so let's not do that. And I thought, that's amazing, but that would be stress too. So that's why I'm highly suggesting we're gonna Kelsey and I are probably gonna do another episode on apnea from our perspective. But I would definitely watch that Rhonda Holman stuff. I would work on that stuff. The whole, like, we're getting into the revived mouthguard stuff and the myonozzle and the kind of mewing ideas of where to put the tongue at night and all this stuff. This is all really coming into, well, some of the things that toxins do. I've got research now on vitamin A and copper, both affecting the skull formation. So if these toxins affect your skull formation and then your skull gets out of shape, it can block all sorts of things or inhibit all sorts of things. And then can we make it go back? Well, we're going to do two things that most people aren't. We're going to do one extra thing that most people aren't doing. One, we're working on the toxins to get rid of those. so that there's not a continued influence making the skull go into bad shapes, if you will. And then we're going to work on restoring the proper structure of the skull. So it's very exciting. I think we're going to be able to help people fix a lot of things that weren't getting better as much as they want, because I just don't know that we can, without bones are shaped by forces on them. But if we can't put a good force on the skull to bring it back into the shape that it needs to be, it may just stay that way. But if we can do something like, let's say, the Revive mouthguard, which I've become a big fan of lately, that may give us the body the signal to remodel and go back into a better shape that will work better. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that was one of the big things that I noticed when I go back in your live streams over the years. Your skull shape and your jaw has changed even before you were using the Revive mouth guard and those kind of things. So there's that's been really interesting to watch.
Yeah, lots of people have noticed that. It's really cool. I never thought that would be something that would have happened. But seems to be. So
Yeah, there you go. And so we talked already about the purpose of the liver to detox the poisons coming in, and I'm just wondering if there's anything more here, why its health function receives the most focus in your program, because people would say, oh, well, the kidneys, oh, the brain, the heart, the everything. So why is the liver kind of your heart in the Love Your Liver world?
well, I was when I first started learning about vitamin A toxicity, and then I got into Anthony Mawson's work, where he was basically connecting all these disease states to symptoms of excess retinoic acid, where they could say, well, when they give people pharmaceutical retinoic acid, the last stage of vitamin A in the detox pathway, when they give them, that's the worst form. We'll talk about that. But when they gave them this, and he could show that symptoms of what used to be called retinoic acid syndrome, they don't call it that anymore. They call it differentiation syndrome. But they would give people retinoic acid syndrome. They would get all sorts of these symptoms. And then he said, you can show that this is all related to these disease states. He got into it because his son died of brain cancer. And then he started looking into that, and he found this connection to retinoic acid. And so there was that, and he started saying, well, the vitamin A is leaking from the liver into the bloodstream, and that's how it causes all these symptoms. And then that's when that kind of started expanding into cholestasis and toxic bile theory and all that stuff. So, I mean, people should know that, like, if your liver stops functioning, right, you die, because everything else would get overwhelmed with metabolic byproducts, which are toxic. We have to have the liver running. It is the most important thing. And then people, as we were going over, I think an episode ago, liver transplants, like when people get a liver transplant, tons of their diseases go away. Because they have a liver that is actually not full of garbage anymore and is actually functioning. And so all of a sudden, all these problems go away. We had somebody on the program who said their dad had the worst eczema, or was it their grandpa? I don't remember, but had the worst eczema. And he eventually got diagnosed with a bile duct, I think bile duct stenosis. So it was basically calcifying shut slowly. They gave him a stent in that bile duct, and all of a sudden, all of the eczema that he had for so many years goes away. So if you had a blocked bile duct, or wasn't one that wasn't passing enough stuff, like your toilet, if it wasn't passing enough water, will back up and flood your bathroom, right? So if he couldn't get enough bile out, it's going to back up and go into his system, and some of it was coming out of his skin. So we just started to, I was trying to think of, I'd always been in medicine, trying to think of what is, okay, so here's the difference in thinking that we have to go by. There is no one single cause of all disease. This should be obvious. Like, it's not, people will be like, like candida. They'll be like, oh, toxic metals cause everything, or parasites cause everything, or candida causes everything. And they don't realize that, if your system functioned well enough to get rid of all the toxic metals that came in, they wouldn't be a problem. Parasites don't live, and parasites and candida cannot live where they are not supported by the environment. So if we start changing those things, we can get rid of all these problems that are all connected. Well, what I was looking for was what was the connecting piece to all of them. I always, like I said, it wasn't one cause, it was one connector. And that seemed to become the liver. Because if the liver can, again, if you can get rid of the toxic stuff that is negatively affecting everything, things just run better. The most important thing we can do is not put toxicity in the system. Because toxicity that doesn't go in the system doesn't have to be dealt with. It doesn't cause damage. You don't have to use resources to process it. It doesn't get stored. And it's just better. So the body has less work to do. The liver has less work to do. So in things about what does the liver do, in my opinion? Well, the liver is a filter. One of the worst things that is going around on social media or in alternative circles or even in conventional circles is people are claiming that the liver is not a filter. This is the biggest lie. It's the biggest misunderstanding or the biggest outright lie I've ever heard. If anybody looks up the definition of a filter, what does a filter do? It takes something out of another fluid, typically. We typically talk about it in terms of fluid, but it could be air. I mean, air is a fluid, right? So it could be taking stuff out of water. It could be taking stuff out of air. Your liver takes, for your liver to run its detox processes, it has to take the stuff literally out of the blood. By definition, that is a filter. The liver filters your blood so it can grab the toxins. Okay, so then the liver is a sewage processing plant, which we're going to talk about, I think, in the next question or two. It processes toxins into hopefully less toxic things, but the problem is sometimes it makes it into more toxic things. So your liver runs these processing. There's phase one, there's phase two. We talk about ADH and ALDH and cytochrome systems and all this stuff. We just really, again, if you didn't know all that, if you just put less toxins in the system, your liver runs better and then everything works better. So then we have the liver is a storage depot for toxins. Your liver absolutely stores toxins. Your body fat stores toxins too. Your bones store toxins. You want to know the part of your body that stores the least toxins in general is your muscles. Why would your body do that? Well, if we assume the body is intelligent and we assume that one of humans' biggest, whatever you want to call it, evolutionary advantages, or designs, grand design, whatever you want to call it, is that we move better in more ways than any other animal on the planet. Like we can do things. We're very good. We're above average at a lot of things. We're not the best at any one thing. Well, maybe walking on two legs, but other than that, we're very good at a lot of things. And so movement. Some people say that we developed this big old brain of ours so we could move. Like that's one of the bigger things about movement is being able to do it. You got to have the brain to do it. So I think that's why the body will spare the muscles in terms of storing toxicity in them. And this is why when people get really, really obese and really, really toxic, they actually start making intramuscular fat inside the very muscles because the body has run out of places to store it. But anyway, the liver stores toxins, storing lots of toxins in the liver, especially fat soluble toxins. Fat storable toxins is the way I call it. But vitamin A is one of those fat storable toxins. We literally bind retinol to fatty acid esters, to fats, so that we can store it. Well, the funny thing is fatty liver, if you look up pictures of it on the internet, is generally, it's not the maroon burgundy color that we think of a healthy liver. It becomes yellowed. Storing fat with yellow vitamin A in it would look like that. And then also people are seeing when they watch liposuction videos, if you ever wanted to watch that, you start seeing the fat coming out is yellowish to orangish. And now people are trying to brag that they're eating grass-fed beef that is literally yellow. Like most people should realize your gut reaction to seeing yellow fat on beef is disgust. We generally don't like yellow things because yellow is a toxic color in nature. It's generally a very toxic color, and it's also a bitter color. So anyway, so those are the three things that the liver does. The liver absolutely stores toxins. Don't let anybody tell you any different. It stores these toxins so that it can, in theory, the hope of the body, first, it has to get the toxins out of your blood so that they stop affecting your brain and your heart and the other things you need to literally stay functioning. And it's storing them, hoping, because in a natural, let's say for people who are into seasonal eating and or these other, there would be seasonal exposures to toxins, different toxins in different seasons. And so the body might have to store them during a certain season. And then as the exposure goes away, then the body is able to get rid of it later. So it's just saying, I can't deal with this right now. I can't get rid of it fast enough, but I can't have it in the blood. So we need to put it somewhere. So it could put it in the blood. I mean, it could put it in the liver. It could put it in the body fat. It could put it in the bones. It could, wherever these toxins can go to cause the least damage is where the body puts it, because we assume the body knows what it's doing. So that is what we've just found. And really also we have found that when we are working on relieving, giving the liver what it needs and relieving it of as much toxic stress as possible, people get better. We don't have protocols for individual, this is the big thing. We don't have protocols for individual conditions. We have the program. And when people work the program, they start seeing all sorts of conditions go away. You were mentioning we were talking the other day about your symptom list that had gone away, right? And I don't think we never specifically worked on any single one of those. Like, it wasn't like we're going to fix this with this and this and this and this. No, it's like we're going to fix all of it with the approach. So this confuses a lot of people, because people want to know, what do I do for this condition? And we go, we help your liver to run better. And then your body fixes it, which is really freeing for some people, and other people just can't wrap their head around it.
Yeah, it was really freeing for me because it simplifies the work. You don't have to chase. Oh, now, because symptoms go round and round in circles. There, 1 minute it's this, next minute it's that. You watch any kind of cold or flu, it circulates through. And, with homeopathy, you're chasing it with remedies. And it's just like, yeah, that is not my jam anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Also, just quickly to point out, it seems like, just to add to what you're saying, that the liver seems like it is the last vestige. It's that I've noticed when people die, at least the ones that have been around me, it's always like the last thing is the liver. Oh, the liver is cancerous now, and they're gone in, very short time after that.
Yeah, once the liver goes, pretty much everything else. I mean, okay, so this was what I was realizing as we went, as I was coming along with this paradigm, is that I started thinking about, like, okay, so with diabetes, as an example, so the pancreas and the liver do this dance to maintain your blood sugar. And I thought, okay, so I started realizing, okay, if the liver goes, everything's broken. If the liver goes, the pancreas is gone. If the liver goes, the kidneys are gone. If the liver goes, the brain's gone, heart's gone, all that stuff. It just depends on which breaks down first. So what I was thinking about, the concept I came up with, okay, so if the liver and the pancreas are doing this blood sugar dance, and the pancreas, this was before Toxic Bile Paradigm, and the pancreas, let's say, just can't handle the damage, the onslaught. And so the pancreas fails before the liver does, because you can't lose the liver. So the liver just is able to take so much punishment that we see other things fail first. And then we think the problem is there, when it's really been the whole time the liver was trying to keep up with its job, and it could take the punishment because it's designed to, and the other parts are failing first. So that was also part of how I came to, like, the liver being the priority thing that we need to take care of and fix. So that was one example of how I got here.
Nice, nice. So the liver is a kind of martyr, but in a good way for the rest of the team on the body. Yeah, in the body. That's awesome. And could I go back also just in terms of the leaky gut thing? I want to answer, because the GAPS people will say that the reason you get sick from those holes in your gut is because undigested food is passing through. Is that also true in addition to that?
I mean, sure.
A big bit about, yeah.
Sure.
But
Why not?
But not nearly as poisonous as the bile.
No, but for those of you who are watching, if you've had allergy tests, like food allergy tests, Go and look up once you understand what high vitamin A foods are or the foods that we tend to avoid, go look at your food allergy list and you'll see lots of high vitamin A foods. I mean, the most common allergic foods worldwide, eggs and dairy, which is where most people get their highest doses of vitamin A from all that. So what is the allergy system reacting to? Could allergy simply be a manifestation of toxicity? And the body's having these reactions to it. So yeah, um I got off topic a little there, I think, but
No, I got you off topic there. Just in terms of undigested food in the blood
oh,
and yeah.
oh that, yes. So what we've seen, okay, so again, I don't obsess on the mechanisms because if we have the right foundational approach, like I don't test food allergies. I tell people if you don't feel good eating something, like just don't eat it. It's very simple. And if you can't tell if you don't feel good eating it, you just work the program, and as you get better, you'll probably be able to tell. But we have people who I mean, we have people who start the program like they started doing carnivore, like all muscle meat carnivore, and now they can't eat anything other than meat. Like they used to tolerate stuff and they weren't well, so they were eating a mixed diet and they weren't well, and then they go carnivore, and let's say some of their issues get better. Okay, great. It is a low vitamin A diet and a very low copper diet, things we tend to avoid. However, then their system loses even more resilience, and now they can't eat anything except meat. So, in a way, their system actually became weaker and less resilient. Whereas when we have people, and I might have those people just start with, okay, you're going to eat what you tolerate, and then we're going to try to fit in some sort of soluble fiber to feed the gut bacteria that have, especially the bifido, that have been absolutely decimated by your choice of diet, your forced choice of diet. We kind of go over this a bit in the Greg Mushin episode on my live stream. So what we see with what we're doing, like I don't try to treat food allergies. I don't try to treat celiac other than we say, if you got celiac, don't eat gluten. Oh, funny thing in the research shows that celiacs literally dump more gluten than normal people when they eat wheat. So again, we have this idea backing up toxic bile paradigm. They dump more bile and they're leaking more bile. And then they have the gut damage from the bile.
Okay. You said dumping gluten. Did you mean dumping bile?
I meant dumping bile. When they eat
Yeah.
gluten, they trigger a bigger bile dump than a normal person. So a celiac has a bigger bile dump when they eat gluten than a normal person does. Did I say that right then?
Yeah.
So, and then what we see also is we see people who come to us and they have lots of food intolerances or food sensitivities, and as they do the program better, they're able to eat those things again. Now, does that mean they should? Like, I mean, we also see people as we help fix their liver. We see people now. I'm not advising people do this, but the people who still choose to drink alcohol, we see people's alcohol tolerance go up. Like they used to be super sensitive to alcohol, and now they can have a couple drinks and they don't have the same problems. What does that show? We're fixing the liver, right? The liver detoxes the alcohol. So we get into these things where their allergies are getting less or going away. We have people who have said that their celiac symptoms, diagnosed celiac, are completely gone. If we are fixing, so GAPS may be trying to, I mean, I literally almost watched a gentleman die from that approach. He withered away on it. His wife kept insisting he did it. I think he was down to about 130 something pounds when I finally said, dude, you got to eat some food. Like you can't keep doing broth and like whatever. I don't even know the ins and outs of it. I know broth is like a major thing, but I was like, you need calories. And he started doing that, and he came back and he was like, I'm doing so much better now. I started eating like more food and real food. And I was like, yeah, good. So leaky gut leaks stuff. Yes. And leaky gut. So the problem with leaky gut is it is leaking directly into the main bloodstream. So it's not in the enterohepatic circulation anymore. It's leaking out into the system. So whatever leaks from the gut is not supposed to be leaking into the blood like that. So whether you want to say it's food, like protein particles or peptides or from the foods, or whether it's toxic bile leaking into the bloodstream, or whether it's heavy metals from the gut leaking into the bloodstream, or just anything that is leaking, We want the gut to be what's called patent. So it's sealed. So we're not leaking things. Like here's the scary thing. Let me just throw this in while we're here in the Ozempic episode. The new semaglutide pills. So I think it's Wegovy and other stuff like that. The semaglutide molecule is so huge that they literally have added a pharmaceutical thing to open up your gut, to basically induce leaky gut in you so they can get they can get like 1% or 3% of this gigantic peptide into your bloodstream. It's insane. So they're literally creating leaky gut with medications now, and that's their goal. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's innovation right there. To be totally sarcastic.
Mhm.
One thing also about people's arguments around the liver not accumulating or not storing toxins, and the medical literature uses the word accumulate,
Mhm.
right, rather than storage. So just a tiny point, but they jump up and down. No, the liver does not store.
Yeah, that is the key word. When somebody I think challenged me and they were saying, well, the liver doesn't store toxins, and I went, okay. So what I do is I go and I start going into the research, and I started, I was using the word store, and you couldn't find it, and because we tend to associate the word store with like we want that we're storing things that we want. Or it's like somebody told me about like with weight loss, right? If you lose something, it tends to mean that you want to find it again. If you use the word I lost this, it means you want to find it again. So using the term weight loss means you want to find it. Well, storage tends to imply that we're keeping it for a good reason. But then I started doing more research into it, and I saw the word accumulate showing up over and over and over. So you can look at it as store or accumulate. One of the things that people say they appreciate about my work is that I make it accessible to people, and accumulate can be, even for some people, that's kind of a big word. And so I just try to keep it simple. And the liver is like literally storing it to me in this context means the same thing as accumulating. It's just putting it somewhere, and it's holding on to it until it can get rid of it. Kind of like we have storage units, right? We rent a storage unit so you can put stuff there, but your goal theoretically is to eventually empty that out and get rid of it. Right. So yeah, that's a point of contention. We see that the kidneys store toxins. The kidneys, when you start looking into toxic metal levels in the kidneys, we start seeing cadmium and other things are accumulating there. And now we have people in this whole in the whole tallow, and I forget what the fat is called that's on the kidneys. Do you remember what that's called?
I do not.
I forget what the term for the fat on the kidneys is. I don't eat it, so I don't really care. But that's going to be like some of the most toxic fat in the body, kind of akin to like a fatty liver fat. You don't hear people going, oh, I want to get a cow that has a really fatty liver because I want the fat on it. They usually know, okay, that's not a healthy cow. And you don't want a ton of marbling in your meat because that means that's a literally obese, probably like basically diabetic cow. And then we have people who are talking about, oh, I want to eat the fat that's surrounding the kidneys. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Where do you think the kidneys are putting their fat soluble toxins? So it's all like, where does, yeah, Beth, you were saying perirenal fat or perinephric fat? And, no, there's a term of it in cooking. Like when we're talking about like tallow is beef fat. But
Okay.
yeah, I forget the term. It's, yeah, if we were just to look up like cooking and kidney fat, we'd probably find it, but it doesn't really matter. Just understand, folks, we are all, including our animals, exposed to tons of fat soluble toxins every day. I don't care that, you can have a grass fed beef ranch out in the middle of nowhere, but the rain goes wherever it wants to go. And you can have places that are cleaner and less clean. However, just like all the oceans are connected, we're all connected. So fat stores fat soluble toxins. So your animals that are exposed to fat soluble toxins store the toxins in their fat. If you are focusing on eating animal fat, like a lot of it, I'm not against animal fat, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying if you're purposely trying to increase your intake of animal fat and you're purposely trying to eat extra fatty things from animals, you are eating extra high doses of fat soluble toxins. You should go watch my weight loss episode, weight loss and toxicity episode, because I go over that there. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
very real. So we store toxins all over the place, accumulate them, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, really good point. It's sad to go to Costco now and see there's just like gobs of tallow on the shelf, and they're just, oh yeah,
They're happy
RFK.
to sell it to you. I mean, they would have just wasted it before, so they're happy to
Right.
give it to you.
Oh, I know they're ecstatic. I think they've got a new product. Yeah, exactly. Could we talk about the main detox pathways in the body? Obviously, the liver, the kidneys, and the skin you talked about, but are there other pathways? I ask, like for example, is it true that the fingernails would be a detox pathway?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
experience I had, and the
yeah.
hair.
Anything where stuff is regularly coming off the body or fluids are coming out of the body is potentially a detox pathway. So we have the big ones, right? The ones we would love for things to stick to would be the liver and the kidneys and the skin, but we would like for it to be in the opposite of that order. We would love for it to stay only the liver and then not have to go to the kidneys and not have to go to the skin. But when we start talking about what we've seen improve in people, like people will say, oh, the sleep in their eyes, which what color is that? Like yellowish, orangish, crusty, right? That's actually toxicity coming out. And as people get less toxic, the evidence of that is they don't make it anymore. And we have people tell us, and I used to have this a lot, the feeling of wet ears, like an ear wetness when they wake up, especially if they've done something toxic. Like the way I started to put this together was from the days when I used to drink alcohol. And I would, every time I would drink alcohol and I'd wake up, I'd have, especially one of my ears would be wet. And then I would do a Q-tip in it and it would come out the orangish or yellowish. The wax would be orangish or yellowish. So earwax is potentially a way that the body is trying to push out toxicity. And when people get a lot of earwax, you can see that it's really nasty colors. And they'll try to say in the mainstream alternative, they'll say that that's an essential oil or sorry, an omega-3 deficiency. And yet we fix it without worrying about any of that stuff. We have people, this is a little TMI for some people, but men will say that as they detox, but when they started, before they started the program, or during times where, let's say, they had this almost insatiable urge to basically masturbate and ejaculate to get rid of it, they will say that their semen was literally yellowish. And as they get less toxic, it becomes more white. The sweat, obviously, that's the skin, but the sweat and the sebum, the oil that comes out in the skin. Well, what does Accutane do for? I mean, retinoic acid, 13-cis retinoic acid is Accutane, and when you eat vitamin A, you literally make that. But we have a lot of people with dry skin, right? So they're not making enough sebum. Well, what does Accutane literally do in a high dose? It shuts down your sebum production in your skin. So imagine if you weren't having your skin's own natural oils coming into your skin, you'd have a lot of dry skin issues, right? So then we see that becomes a problem. Saliva is a huge part of this. Your saliva can get toxic either through both the blood, it's made from the blood, so it's going to have what the blood has in it. And it's also, if you have reflux, you can get stuff into your saliva that way, whether you realize it or not. They talk about the silent cough or the cough of GERD, of silent GERD, that they don't catch a lot. People will have a chronic cough and they can't figure out where it's coming from until they realize they have reflux. And then they can hopefully fix that. But the saliva is why your teeth get yellow, because your teeth are marinating in these toxins all day, these yellowish, brownish toxins. And then as you fix your bile, the bile that is actually literally leaking into your saliva, it goes away. So there's all these different ways. I mean, your sweat glands. Actually, so the sweat in your armpits and in your groin is actually, it has an extra component to it that your other sweat doesn't, which is why your armpits tend to smell and your groin sweat tends to smell different than the sweat on other parts of your body. So that's another way so you have extra detox in those areas. So yeah, there's and then like you were talking about with the nails. The nails are meant to go away. So would the body try to put stuff, the body when it's toxic will try to get rid of toxicity every which way it can. So anything that's leaving the body would be fair game. As an example, we were just talking about cracked heels, like yellow cracked heels. Well, we help people fix that all the time. That's a vitamin A toxicity issue. And as we fix it, and often the heels will become yellow. At the worse they get with the cracking, they actually literally start to look yellowish. And as we fix that, the yellow goes away and the cracking goes away. So is the body actually literally trying to get rid of, or is it collecting because of gravity? Blood flow would be worst down at your feet. So are these toxins like literally collecting there because of gravity, and then it's causing the dry skin? And if you think about it, the dry skin that is yellow is actually in a way detoxing. It's taking stuff out of your system. So is that good? I mean, do we want to have yellow heels? No, it's a sign. It can be good and bad. Yes, it's a sign you're toxic. And yes, your body's trying to get rid of it. And so what do we want to do? Well, we want to fix it so it doesn't have to happen that way. So yeah, there's a bunch of ways.
Right. And then you do actually do hair testing. So that's how you read the toxicity in the body. And I've when I look really closely at my hair, I see tons of copper.
Hmm.
Like really close. I can see it's very refractive of a copper color. Doesn't look red, but yeah. Very good. And so what are the things that speed detox up? And can you talk about why that's not always desirable?
Actually, wait, let me head back to the biochemical pathways of detox.
Oh, shoot, I missed one.
That's all right. That's all right. So we'll just kind of start small. I'm not going to hit on every single one, but we're going to hit on the main ones that we address. So one of the ones that nobody talks about is that it was brought to my attention by Kelsey, was P glycoprotein, or PGP. P glycoprotein is the literal cellular detox it's the cell's detox mechanism. It's like carrying stuff from the cell to take it out of the cell so it can go into the fluids and hopefully get to the liver and be processed there. So P glycoprotein has become something else that we look at to help assess whether things are slowing down detox or helping detox. And the funny thing is a lot of pharmaceuticals that are coming out these days are specifically trying to slow down PGP. So there's that. Then we get into, phase 1 and phase 2 of the liver. I don't tend to use those terms much. What we tend to talk about, so in like phase 1, there's the cytochrome P450 system. And this is a lot of, it's biotransforming toxins into either less toxic things or more toxic things. And actually, for those of you who want to know, ADH, alcohol dehydrogenase, an important enzyme to us, is also in phase 1. So this is where the liver is trying to turn things that it can into water-soluble things, water-soluble toxins. So then those can go into the blood and go to the kidneys, because the kidneys gets rid of the water stuff. So then there's phase 2, which is more of what we tend to talk about, which is where there's aldehyde dehydrogenase. Aldehyde dehydrogenase, in my opinion, is the most critical detox pathway in the body. And we do all we can to help that. Now, there's a funny correlation that we found in the research, is that when something seems to help in a good way, as in makes these things run faster, if we see something makes PGP run faster, it also tends to make cytochrome P450s run faster, and it also tends to make ALDH run faster. So we have established that there's a pattern between these three detox pathways that is reflected in each other. So if we can only find a paper that says, I don't know, like molybdenum helps ALDH to function correctly, like you need molybdenum for ALDH to run correctly. Okay, so molybdenum is probably also helping the cytochromes, and it's probably also helping PGP. If we find something that slows down one of these, then it's likely slowing down the other ones. And then the phase 2 of the liver also is what does the conjugating, which is attaching things to the bile, which is, or the toxins, which is like taurine and glycine and sulfates and methyl groups and all that stuff. What we are trying to do is we're not trying to force the body to do that. We're trying to give the body, good foods and what it needs so the body can decide what we're trying to do. We're not trying to force a bunch of things in there to make it do it, because if you try to affect the bile by putting in tons of methyl groups or tons of, amino acids like glycine or taurine, you can actually, you can change the bile recipe, as we call it, the way the recipe of the bile that the liver makes. The recipe of the bile that the liver makes is your symptoms. That is the recipe of your symptoms. So if you go in and you take, like, let's say a bunch of glycine, what I was talking to a buddy of mine about, Mike Roberto, about is what we've seen in people is like, okay, 25% of people seem to do better with some extra glycine. And he was one of them. 25% of people, which includes me, do worse on extra glycine. Glycine will give me major insomnia within a day or two. And then there's the other 50% of people who don't notice much of a change. So we can have the same compound helping someone's bile recipe to be less aggravating. We can have it worsening somebody else's recipe. And then some people just don't notice much about it. So that is, and those are the pathways in the liver that we tend to talk about. And then that would then lead into the bile dumping into the gut, or the water soluble toxins, or the bile going into the blood and then potentially coming out of the skin. So those are the pathways that we tend to focus on, but what my goal with all of this, as you talked about me simplifying it, is we are just trying to find out we're not trying to look at all these mechanisms. I think the reason why alternative medicine and conventional medicine haven't gotten very far is because everybody tries to drill down to these like cellular mechanisms. And I don't think we're good at that. I actually, with the duration paradox that we'll talk about, I think that cell studies most of the time show the exact opposite effect that is going to. So if a cell study says it does this and this, they say this is good. Well, when we look at it in the whole human or the whole animal long term, because a cell study is short term by definition, we see it do the opposite and cause problems. So once we figured that out, then we can start looking at cell studies and say, "Ooh, this says retinoic acid's great for all these things," and we go, "That means it's bad," and that's what we see in people. So we started working on that, and so we just say do these things because we know they generally help the detox pathways of the liver, and then things start generally looking better for people over time.
Nice, I like that. And so ALDH, just to clarify, is aldehyde dehydrogenase, correct?
Yes, ADH is alcohol dehydrogenase, so there's no L. And then aldehyde, so if you just remember, so alcohol has an AL, but aldehyde dehydrogenase, ALDH, is the really, really important one. And that's where I think people get bogged down. Actually, I forgot to add one more thing in there. We found that PGP, when we looked at a bunch of literature, so not one piece of literature is going to put this together. We had to put this together ourselves by looking at a bunch of it. When we looked at things that help with PGP, ALDH, cytochrome P450s, when we speed those things up in a good way, more bile tends to be made. So when you think about what modern medicine is trying to do with like chemotherapy, they're actually specifically looking at how can we slow down ALDH. That's one of their big things. Or how can we slow down PGP? Like they are literally trying to slow down your detox and have you make less bile, which then supports what we're doing because they try to treat symptoms. They're not fixing the cause. They're trying to treat the symptom, and the symptoms are caused by the bile. So they just say, in the old allopathic way, if it's too hot, make it cold. If it's too wet, make it dry. They just do the opposite. So if the bile is causing the problem, which they don't even realize, shut down the bile. And then people seem to get better for a little while until all the stuff hits the fan later.
Right, until the customer's out of the store and lost the receipt and can't do anything about it and damage done. Yeah. Okay, so it's ADH is phase one, and then ALDH is phase two.
It fits into phase two, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And so, what are the things that speed detox up?
Okay. Well, it's kind of a simple. It's fairly simple. We try to say it's simple, it's not easy. But speeding detox up. Okay, so imagine like you're an employee, or you have your own business. When you have a lot of work come in, you have tons of work coming in, which is, think of the work as toxins that the liver's dealing with. You have a lot of work coming in, and that does tend to stress you. And then when people get stressed, do they work faster or slower?
Slower.
they tend to work slower. So you're stressed because you have the giant pile. So the more toxins that come in, this is a very important concept that people don't get, is the more toxins that come in, the slower your detox runs. Okay, so I'm probably gonna hit on both of the speeding it up and the slowing it down at the same time. So the more
Perfect.
toxins that are coming in, the slower your detox runs. So then, like, let's say if you had less work coming in, less toxins coming in, you can look at that stack of jobs and be less stressed because you're like, oh, I'm catching up on it. And then you have, some positivity, some confidence that you're going to get through it, and then you can work on the rest of it. So generally, yeah, the more toxic somebody is, the slower their detox runs, which means they're building up more toxins, just like if that stack is growing, right? Because it still comes in at the same rate, and you're just not clearing it out enough. So then as we put less toxins in, the body can then catch up on work that it wasn't doing before. So let's say they get the stack down, and then the person's able to work on the other projects that they've been putting off. So that's like the stored toxins that they can then start getting rid of. So other things are, so the more toxins that are stored in the liver, like these actually literally damage the liver. So you're damaging the liver and it's not going to run as well. So as we are able to help the liver get rid of more toxins by especially getting the liver to make bile like it normally does, but then binding up that bile with things like soluble fiber and things like charcoal we use a lot of, and our zeolite with a Y. These things help bind stuff and force it to leave. So then we have less stuff in the liver. And then in terms of, so if you're not getting rid of it, it's like, again, it's just building up. And then we have nutrient status. There are very specific nutrients that the body needs in significant amounts that I do not believe are in the food anymore. And that if people choose to only do food, they run the risk of potentially never catching up, or potentially watching let's say somebody does a low vitamin A diet out there, and the way they're doing it and the choices they make are resulting in a zinc deficient diet, or they're just not bringing in as much zinc as they're losing. Well, then they could, let's say they do amazing on the low vitamin A diet in the early days, early years even, but this zinc deficiency slowly creeps up and festers and gets worse. And so then years down the line, they're like, well, I got these new problems, like the eye episode I went over recently. Well, I got these new problems. Well, your zinc finally, the level cracked, and now you have a zinc deficiency problem. It's not just a vitamin A problem. That's why we don't pigeonhole ourselves into just low vitamin A. We're fixing as many things as we can. But the list of minerals that we need in terms of significant amounts or potentially to supplement is very small compared to other people. Our list of things that we would potentially add to people's processes is relatively very small. We're not doing kitchen sink supplements, and we're not doing all of that. We're getting people off more supplements than we're putting them on for the most part. But yeah, so having the right nutrients will allow your body. So this is a key term. Having the proper amount of nutrients will allow the detox pathways to run at the speed they are supposed to. Right? We're not trying to speed things up. We're trying to say that, like, if you were driving with your emergency brake on, you're going to go slower. Is the goal to then, like, what most people do with detox is they push the gas harder, even though the emergency brake is still on. And then they wonder why their engine is getting all gunked up, and they maybe feel a little better at the start when they push the gas, but then over time they feel worse because that emergency brake is literally ruining their car from the inside out. We are trying to take off the emergency brake. That's a key idea with what we're doing. Now, some people we can speed up detox or we can accelerate detox or restore detox to where it is by giving people certain things. However, there's all sorts of, like, how I was talking about those detox pathways in the liver. If we have certain bottlenecks at certain parts, and you push a part that's behind a bottleneck, so you're trying to fit this much stuff into this little hole, because let's say all of a sudden you take a bunch of zinc and the vitamin A is released from your liver and the copper is released from your liver, and all these things come out, and you have this big amount trying to fit through this little hole, and it can't, and then it backs up into your system and you feel negative symptoms. Then we say, okay, well, we don't want to do that. We're pushing the gas on this spot too hard. and there's a bottleneck, which is just evidenced by the symptoms. All we need to know is that the symptoms are happening. We don't have to know exactly where it is. And then we just say, okay, so let's stop pushing on the gas and let's keep working on this stuff at levels that it goes through the system, like everything fits. And then over time, what will happen is as everything fits, then the whole system gets bigger. Your detox process gets stronger. You get more resilient. You have less symptoms. And then you're able to do things that you weren't able to do before. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. There's a paradigm in the natural health world that we should always be speeding up the detox. So if a little was good, more is better. And it's all in that paradigm of hacking the system. Right. So back to your original comments about the body being intelligent and the pacing is everything in this. Because honestly, if I'm slowly detoxing until I die, but I feel good the whole time, like that went well, I'm going to be happy about that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so the things that people do, can we just make a really quick list of things people do to speed up their detox? That like, you know, the saunas and you talked about supplements like zinc and molybdenum and selenium.
That's a fun word. Sometimes I just tell people to say Molly or Molly B if molybdenum is a difficult word to say. But yeah, so we could head into that. So the thing, okay, so again, things that accelerate detox are often thought in general to be good for us. However, if we have people who are really, really toxic and their bile's really toxic and they're leaking a lot of it into the system. So a lot of the things that are known to speed up detox increase bile production. So if you have somebody who's leaking a lot of bile and you increase their bile production or their bile dumping, and they still have all these holes leaking it, they can feel worse for the time being. So this is why, like as an example, general things, the sun is generally thought to be healthy, right? It's good, at least in our world, getting sunlight is good for you. Don't let anybody tell you any different. However, many people who are very sick, when they go out in the sun too much, they feel like a truck hit them. And they go, I can't do that. I have people who come to me and they're like, I can't go in the sun for more than 5 minutes at a time, or else I'm just wrecked for several days. Well, what would going in the sun for 5 minutes cause in somebody that would wreck them for multiple days? If it's creating so the sun oxidizes things, which is the main process of detox that your liver does. So your liver does oxidative processes for toxins. We've been told to eat tons of plant antioxidants. Well, plant antioxidants would directly slow down your own liver's detox processes, which is why that's one of the many reasons why people have gotten so much worse over the years, was the trash garbage antioxidant theory of health, that taking tons of plant antioxidants and supplement antioxidants is going to fix everything. Now, do we need to have antioxidant processes in our body like glutathione and other things like that? Yes. Again, back to the theory, we want the body to be in control of that. We don't want to, your liver makes glutathione. Putting more glutathione in is like giving a man a fish. We're trying to teach the man to fish. We're not trying to just give the man a fish and then hope that it's enough to last him however long, and then it would run out again, right? So, where was I? Oh, so back to we were talking about things that sun oxidizes things. Oxidation is generally a detox process. You can speed up your detox with that, and you could feel amazing. Like you may be and this doesn't mean like, okay, so if I say something looks better in one aspect, like let's say you can go out in the sun and you feel great afterwards. Does that mean you're not toxic? No, it doesn't mean. It means that aspect of it is not a problem for you. So we can have people will say, how do I know if I'm toxic? And I'm like, do you feel bad? You're probably toxic if you feel bad. So the sun can be an example of like something that wrecks somebody or something that helps people feel better by stimulating detox and bile production and bile dumping. Okay. So saunas do the same thing. So the sun will increase bile production and bile dumping. Heat will increase bile production and bile dumping. Now, generally, a funny thing about that, so saunas would fit into that, but we generally know that people who live on, like, let's say, coastal communities, like on the beach, generally, at least in the past, used to be a lot healthier than the people who are living in, like, let's say the Midwest, where it's dreary and it's snowy and it's cold and all that stuff, because the normal process before people got super duper toxic, which started about at the mid to late 70s, was when they really started poisoning us. If we look back, like, people who lived in beach towns were generally a lot healthier than people who lived in drearier, low sun, low temperature areas. And this is because they're detoxing more all the time. So we have that. Then stress tends to cause bile dumping. And stress would be, so the sun would be a stress. Heat would be a stress. It can be money stress, family stress, toxic stress that you take in. It can be all of this stuff. So that can tend to increase. Your body wants to get rid of it. So if a toxin comes in, your body does often try to get rid of it as quick as it can. So then we have that. Then we have okay, this is a complicated one. Soluble fiber. And this is important for those of you who are new to the program to listen to very carefully. Soluble fiber has a benefit in that it adsorbs or soaks up bile, and then it can help carry it out in your poop. Okay? Now that can be good or bad. We'll go over why. So the soluble fiber is also, it can be digested by your gut bacteria and turned into butyrate or butyric acid, which is then a food for your gut cells. So soluble fiber does a couple of things. And this is why we were talking earlier about the dysbiosis that carnivores can get, because they don't feed their gut bacteria any carbs really, and they don't feed their gut bacteria any soluble fiber. But back to this soluble fiber thing about detox. So soluble fiber in the research has been shown to increase bile dumping after that meal. Okay, so you have something that you just took in that is increasing bile dumping, and it can also adsorb or grab onto and hold onto the bile to help carry it out. Well, we get into a balancing act. So at the start, when people are doing, smaller amounts of soluble fiber, it still triggers a little bit of bile dumping, but it can, it triggers the bile dumping, but there's enough soluble fiber there to adsorb all the extra bile. And so then people on the right dose of soluble fiber will feel better, and they will generally poop better. Now, the right amount is the key word there, because the right amount is different for each person and at different stages of their recovery. Okay, now, let's say somebody was hardly making any bile and they eat soluble fiber. Well, they're not going to dump much, and any bile that comes out is going to be kind of overwhelmed by the soluble fiber that's there. It's going to soak it all up. Well, the key thing that this gets into that's really important is that if you soak up all your bile, people don't know this, but it is the amount of bile in your intestines that is the main trigger for your pooping reflexes. So if you don't have if the bile is all soaked up into the soluble fiber, it's not touching your gut walls. It's not triggering you to poop. And so a lack of bile in your guts is a huge cause of constipation. So this is where, when some people who are hardly making any bile, they take soluble fiber and they're like, this constipates me for days. Okay, don't do it then. Like, you don't have enough bile going into your gut. Okay, so then we get into the people so if people take way too much soluble fiber, for them, their liver gets overexcited about dumping bile. It says, oh my gosh, we have all this stuff that can absorb it. And the people who are able to can dump tons of bile. And it's more bile than the soluble fiber can adsorb. So then you have the soluble fibers taking what it can, but there's bunch extra. And this then triggers the pooping reflex, and then people get diarrhea. This is the big problem that people could never figure out, is why some studies say fiber helps people poop. Some studies say fiber makes people constipated, and some people say fiber gives them diarrhea. When we put it into toxic bile paradigm, we start going, yes, it can be all of them. And it can be the same thing, the different process. Some person at one time in their recovery could be constipated from soluble fiber. Somebody else, same person later in their recovery, could have too much soluble fiber and cause themselves diarrhea. So with the fiber thing, we're one of the few groups out there that is saying you need to figure out what the best dose of soluble fiber is for you. Okay. Now, generally, those minerals that we talked about, those are necessary to run detox pathways. Flesh niacin is necessary to run ADH and ALDH. These things that we need to run these detox pathways, People who are real toxic and are not moving toxins well, too much of those at the start, sometimes it's any of them or too much of them at the start can cause them to get this dumping and leaking because they're just blocked up. And then they feel worse. And so we say, don't take it yet. But the key thing that's showing that people are getting better, and I don't know if this happened to you either, but I think it did, whereas they go along and they're getting less toxic and their detox system is running better, then they're able to take more or start taking it and they feel better from it. So we're actually showing that their detox was too slow at the start to even handle getting it back to normal. But as they get less toxic, their detox systems run better and run faster, and then they're able to take more of the things that they need to run it, and then they feel even better. So
Brilliant. Yeah, that's amazing. It has really changed my life to understand my relationship to soluble fiber. And it's a moving target constantly. Like you say, as I get less toxic now, I'm having to make some adjustments again. There was a time where I could only have, I needed a lot more soluble fiber to run my bowels. And then I realized, oh, that's actually stopping things back off, back off, back off. And then, oh, forward a little bit, kind of
yep.
things. Yeah, yeah, it makes a really big difference. So that's great. That you talk about the Goldilocks principle, which is always at like, and it's not, it's you just can't identify one thing and say that's it for the rest of my life. It's you're gonna have to keep being the detective.
Yes. Well, that's one of the things that's different about our work. Is we're saying it's personal responsibility. Like we don't have a magic pill. Nobody's claiming a magic pill. We're not saying this is the protocol you follow for everything or for this specific disease. We're saying your body, and I mean the royal you, your body is toxic in its own unique ways. Your body is deficient in its own unique ways. Just like some people run faster than others, some people are faster detoxers than others, just the way they are. So we have to look at all of this stuff and say, we can go by labs, which we do the hair testing and the blood testing so that we can assess these things with as minimal interventions as necessary. That's what we would love to do. And then just I kind of lost my track of thoughts. We were doing the chat. But we're just trying to figure out what each person needs to do. And for people so if you're listening to this and this is the first time you're hearing me talk about this, if you think that this jumping on the program is like, I mean, we have people who literally join the program and then they're like, they don't do anything. They almost feel like if they get the membership, it's like osmotically, magically going to manifest them getting better. Like they don't watch the videos, they don't read the articles. They're just like, okay, what now? And it's like, do the work. all the good things in life require work. And that's what we're bringing. And then the great thing about this is we're teaching people, as you were saying, we're teaching people how to know their body. And like when they have something come up, they might, just like you were talking about, maybe you go, maybe that's a soluble fiber thing. I know that I'm on too much right now, or I know that I could maybe use some more. Or so people learn how to manipulate in a good way their physiology because they learn from paying attention to things. And I give people a lot of tips on here's what this tends to cause if you do too much of it. And here's what this tends to cause if you don't do enough of it. And then we can guide people into learning their bodies better. And just not everybody wants to do that. They just want to go. I mean, our world today is very stressful and complicated enough. For the people who are willing to take the responsibility and say, my health is my responsibility, no matter how you got sick in the first place. Forgive yourself, forgive the people who did it to you, forgive your parents, however you got here. You are here now. You're the only person who can fix it. So when you're ready to get started on that and learn your body in the way that we teach so that you can fix the problems at their root cause, then that's what we're doing here. Yeah.
That's a major bonus. Yeah. At first, it was frightening. I have to say that there was no protocol to fall back on, that I couldn't just read a list of supplements and food and follow the lines and color in the lines. And but in the end, it's such a blessing because there's a much greater internal intelligence and relationship with your own body that gets cultivated. So yeah, it's a little overwhelming at the beginning, and you're going to have to study. You're going to have to learn. but it is so absolutely worth it. And you're an excellent teacher. You also, when you go through the medical literature, you're literally teaching people how to read it, not just saying it and drawing your conclusions. You're literally going, oh, that word I know they're gonna trip on, so I'll define it as you go along. And through studying your work, I've become empowered to actually be able to read some medical literature myself, not maybe, to the ultimate degree, but I am much more greatly resourced now in the learning department.
Yeah,
Never
it
mind.
adds a lot of discernment capability to. So I mean, that's one of the big things is looking at stuff and going. Because I mean, if we looked at just the vitamin A literature, 99% of it says it's amazing and it's wonderful. And then we see the 1% that says, ooh, this caused problems. And yet, even still, on every start of every study that says vitamin A is a problem, they say, oh, it's good for you and it's completely necessary. They always gaslight you at the beginning of it. So that, it's being able to look at stuff and go, not everything, just as not everyone's input is useful, not all medical research is helpful or useful at all. So filtering that out, that's one thing I try to help people with and show them, especially how they're getting gaslighted on these things these are good for you. And I go, no, they're not. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and how they hide that in the articles at the very end. And yeah, by the way, oh, we took everybody out that the experiment didn't give us positive results on, and all those kinds of little tricks. But yeah, well, thank you very much. I think this is fantastic for a part one, and will be of great value to those that especially are coming new to this work who need a foundation place to start. And so stay tuned, I guess, for part two or three, even as we go along. There's a lot of material here. Thank you so much, Garrett. This has been just fantastic. It's really changed my life. It's changed the lives of a lot of people around me, actually.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this with me. I think it went better than me just being a talking head. So
Fantastic. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
bye.